record on this?
AJ is on its way as well.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining for this first Business Central Roundtable. Let me just share my screen if I can figure out how to do that. Screen, gosh. Okay, so the idea of this session was to have an informal conversation, which was started through a Twitter post I think AJ made about what seemed like a crazy estimate for some Business Central customizations, and then Mary Thompson replied she'd seen similar crazy estimates for BC implementations. And while we know there are some various reasons for some of those really crazy large estimates, I thought I'd be interested in discussing just how we could improve the process and come up with some estimates for Business Central customizations. So with that in mind, where is my PowerPoint switcher here? One moment. There we go. So I wanted to, some of the things we see are what appear to be mistakes, or it's a partner who doesn't know what they're doing and they have these crazy estimates. And I understand those, but what I'm interested in is, in this discussion, is to come up with more of a positive and constructive and helpful discussion about how we can improve our practices. And to the extent you've had certain experiences doing these estimates or doing the customizations, share those experiences and what works, what doesn't, what problems and pitfalls have you come across. So in order to contain this and make it so it's not too crazy in terms of discussion and scope, I just wanted to artificially limit the discussion to some a theoretical scenario. SaaS only, so Business Central SaaS only. And I know that may not be relevant to some of you because you're still working with NAV customers, on-prem customers, and all sorts of other scenarios. But just to simplify it, I went with SaaS only, and I'm using the term smaller customizations. And I know that's an arbitrary distinction, which is why I give an example later. And for now, these are just per tenant extensions. So maybe this bundles up into one per tenant extension for the time being. And the overall context is, I'm a consultant. The customer is asking for an estimate of how long this customization is going to take for Business Central. They want a price or an estimate before they proceed and approve this. So, and then some more limiting factors. The context is, it's the new hypothetical BC SaaS customer with 6 Business Central essential users. So a relatively small implementation, nothing too crazy. So that customer is paying just $420 a month for their Business Central subscription, which obviously produces certain expectations. And simplifying assumptions, just a US customer, no foreign entities, single language, single currency. So all the simplifying assumptions we can make. And the scenario I posed was, the customer is asking to add 2 existing BC fields. So they already exist in the table. They just want them exposed on the page to 4 different list pages. And I use this as a scenario because that's what I'm seeing at the moment. This customer is starting to use BC. They're using list pages, and they're like, well, I want to see this field and this field in order to see what these transactions are and to better identify those transactions on the list page. Okay, so for example, on the PO list page, they want to see the vendor order number and vendor shipment number fields. Those are PO header fields. They just want those visible with each PO that's listed on the list page. Okay, no problem. Those are standard fields. You just need to expose them on a page. And let's assume that this is the case for 4 different list pages, 2 fields each, 8 fields total. So relatively simple. And then I added a second one in there, which was a journey I recently went on. And that was to add the source name field to the general ledger entries list page. And as I learned, this is a relatively common request. And there is even an app source extension that was created by Gunnar for this purpose. And the customer's new to BC, and they are discovering these additional missing fields as they start to use the product. So, today they're requesting these fields, but it could be that in a week or 2 weeks, they have a couple more fields they want. So that's another, complicating factor. So my request to you was, how do you estimate this smaller customization of 4 pages, 8 fields, plus the source names on the general ledger entries list page? Time materials, fixed price, do you itemize it? Do you just give them one price tag? And then what do you include in this? Project management, design, unit tests, development testing, source control, deployment? Do you include DevOps and CI/CD? And as we all know, when new BC version comes out, even minor things that the BC team doesn't think are breaking changes can cause errors or warnings in Visual Studio Code or during the build or during the test pipeline, you name it. I've seen those tweets going out. And then what about change requests and ongoing maintenance, for instance? So that's the question that I posed to you via email and asked for some of your responses. Before we get into some of the responses I received, any thoughts, questions?
Nope.
No, we're good? We're good up to this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was clear. It was
okay.
clear.
Okay, got it. Well, that's good. Okay, so here we go. So I received 5 prior to the call, I believe, and I kind of summarized them as simply as I could. And they had it wasn't in a crazy range, but there was a fair amount of range. And technically the lowest was 4 hours, but I went with that particular estimate. I went with the higher end of that range, which ended up being 8 hours, but went from 6 hours, which includes development, a test, automated test for the source name field on the GL entries list page, and DevOps, and that included a maintenance fee with that one. Then there's 6 hours just for development, and this proposal said, well, since the app already exists for the GL source name, let's just go ahead and use that. So it's essentially 6 hours for the 4 pages, 8 fields, but use the app GL source name to take care of that component. Now on the other end, right, kind of in the middle, we had a not to exceed 8 hours. And this was the 4 to 8 hour estimate that included a project board to manage the task, some unit tests, and using either DevOps or GitHub, whatever the customer was comfortable with. But it wasn't clear to me whether that was just for source code management or whether that included any CI/CD or pipelines. I'm going to assume no. Okay. Then on the higher end, 2 different separate estimates. Both happen to be 16 hours total, but one broke it out into 8 and 8. So the 4 pages with 8 fields, that was 8 hours. That included, a sit down with design, discussing what fields, analysis, development, testing, deployment, source code management. This top one did not include DevOps pipelines or automated testing, I don't believe, but it did include deployment. Okay, then another one, 16 hours as well. This one happened to be a 7/9 split. Similar analysis, design, project management, testing, no DevOps. So a bit of a range. Given how small this project is, one could say, well, there's going to be the variation. But if a customer received one estimate from one partner for $1,000 and received another estimate from another partner for $2,800, which I'm sure we've all seen, I've certainly seen, they think, wow, this is over 2.5 times the cost. They think in terms of percentages and ratios, even though it's really, maybe an 8-hour difference between 2 projects. So any thoughts on what you see here?
Question first.
Yep.
What does no DevOps mean in this context? Does it mean that it is not executed or that it is not adding to the price?
So in this case, the code will be checked into a source code management repository. But when I say DevOps in this case, no DevOps pipeline. So no CI, CD, no automated test runs, and no automated deployment is my assumption. And if anyone submitted these and they want to clarify, feel free to do so. But in this particular case over here, DevOps, CI/CD, automated pipelines was included, with the 6 hours. On these, my understanding is that the automated testing and pipelines were not included.
Oh no, I can say because I'm very expensive on this one. But the first comment here, which will lower little this this is that I just use it as 2 separate cases, right? So that's one thing. I also didn't include that you can use the app from app source because I was just doing it as an example of estimation.
Yep. Okay.
So that was one thing. So it will lower for sure the estimate in such case. And then the answering question from Waldo, it will in this one, I think it should include the DevOps as we are thinking of DevOps. So deployment, automated tests as well. There was some. I think, I hope at least I wrote that. And also it includes the pipelines, but I think it's really hard to estimate the pipelines and running all the builds and so on. I think it should be part of the service level agreement contract. So that's something which I think, because you never know, it can have one modification, but it can have hundreds of modification. And in fact, you are running pipelines the same way. So that's why I don't include it in the estimate, but I think such companies should have such agreement on that.
I think I was the other expensive one on the end. And that, again, no DevOps included was because I lack experience to say what is the value of that, what is the ongoing cost of that. So there was a maintenance suggestion that would go along with that offer, where I would definitely want to be as an organization is making use of that for sure. But given my background not knowing that, I feel that's an organizational cost for us to absorb at the moment while we're in that learning phase. And that way we would better understand what is the value for the customer for that.
And I do have a couple more slides for the additional components and alternative approaches, which we'll get to. And
I was going to say that kind of changes the context, right? If you add that was something I was going to bring up. If you're thinking about adding maintenance, ongoing maintenance, and future upgradability of your app, that increases the scope significantly, because then you have to think about, how am I going to do this? Am I going to do this deployment automatically? Do I need to set up a pipeline? If this is just all that we're doing is this little project, I wouldn't even think about any of that. I would just deliver the source code and the app, and that's it. And then we would have a discussion with the client, because but that goes beyond the scope. And I think it's an interesting question there is, should you even do these little projects if it is not within the context of a greater effort?
Excellent point, which there are 2 other references in later slides. And yes, and so coming from the GP world, we do not have the DevOps, CI/CD, that entire concept. And other than say .NET testing tools, I'm not aware of any unit testing architecture or tools at all in the Dynamics GP
that's
world.
Quite the same as coming from CAL world. That's quite the same. I mean, we are not coming from a world where that was big.
So these are entirely new conversations with customers, right? And
Absolutely.
will the customer even know? It's like, how do they assess? They're like, well, they're having to make the, do I risk having a breaking change and then having to call you at the last minute because we didn't know 17.2 was going to break 8 fields, right?
Also, something which I never estimated before, before we went to AL, was code review, because it was just done in CAL, and at least in the companies where I work, it was no code review. But later it's just changed, right? So it's also take time for someone else, right? So it also should be included.
Interesting.
CAL, we didn't make mistakes, so
Agree with that completely. I mean, that never existed in the old way of doing it, right? I mean, I'm lucky to be work with a client that actually do that kind of stuff, but that is not the norm. But I also think the SaaS perspective is what kind of introduces some of these requirements, because back in the day, right, in our nav days, right, I mean, a client had an install of nav, and that ran for a couple of years, and then maybe they did an upgrade. You didn't have these dynamic changes that came every month. Some clients did do their CUs on a semi-regular basis, but even if you look at some of the add-ons for nav, there were some add-ons, they released the objects to the initial version, and some add-ons, okay, every quarter we're going to release a new version, regardless of whether Microsoft or Navision updated, did some hotfix. They said, okay, well, you're on your own dealing with that.
Yeah, and so the SaaS point, I think that's a good point. By specifying SaaS, I'm kind of, I guess the best practice will be to have DevOps pipelines, automated testing, even for smaller customizations. Would you agree?
Well, but I think I agree with Daniel. I mean, I think in my world, I would absolutely want it, but I definitely agree. If you're just slapping on a couple of fields, do you really need that? I know I'm sure that there's arguments for it, and I already see Waldo raising his hands.
He's cringing.
But I get it. But I also live in the real world.
Oh, come on! Don't play that card.
I just want to make
doesn't align with your current state of working. That you shouldn't play that card too much. I'm living in the real world. The real world is simple now. Actually not simple now. We have a SaaS world, and for every single customer, it's the same deal. Every single one will be upgraded every single month. And to give you one simple example, like Daniel said that he would create an app and just slam the fields in there and that's it. Sure, and probably 95% of the time that will work, even in the next version as well. But we have now a version with an extra code rule, let's say, that will kind of like fail your little app with your new fields, because I need to set up a new app JSON, and my app JSON will fail in the new version, in one of the next versions of Business Central. So that is also part of the maintenance that you need to do and prepare yourself. Now, just imagine that you have like 150 of those customers.
Yeah, and I did not mean to suggest that when I said I would just that would be it, because like you said, it is a much more complex world now, and you have to make sure that the customer knows about the context of all the apps that are in their system and how they interact with each other, and how dangerous it is to simply throw in another PTE app in there without knowing the context of everything else that works in there. So you can say, well, adding a field is simple, it's a tiny little thing, but you have to know what the context of the greater system is. And so when you do a little thing like that, especially in the SaaS world, you have to have some sort of session with the client to know, what other apps are in their system, what other development effort is going into their system, and have some sort of conversation with their partner of record. Why are they coming to you for this tiny little thing? You have to be aware of everything. So I want to make sure that I'm not recommending this as best practice. This is, just the context was, this is only this tiny little thing. If that is everything, then I would just do the PTE thing. But in the real world, it is not that simple. You have to make sure that you have to know about it. Are they on an embed situation? What other apps are in there? How does that interact with each other? It's much more complex now.
One of the foundational concepts that I'm expressing a lot to people coming up from NAV to BC is that the old tempo of product development was between the customer and the partner. And in the SaaS model, the product development tempo is set by Microsoft, and we have to keep up.
Yeah.
I have also a fairly simple structure. In my partner I work for, we have the consultants working with the customer. We're either the partner record or a contributing partner, but working in cooperation with the other in that case. And then we get the changes specified. Developers give an estimate. It gets added to the consultant time. We make the changes in the sandbox. Consultant will confirm or reject. When it's confirmed, at that point in time, they will, if they need to, show the customer, and they'll be approved and go through the pipeline and be published to their production system. So now the stuff I do on the side so far has all been to the old style customers. So I've not had to use that on my other work yet. Hopefully at some point I'll get some BC stuff on the side. But in terms of partner, I think if you have a structure, you can keep the costs down, and we have some customers who have a bucket of hours for doing small things like this.
Yep, and that's next on this slide. So
if I will just say one thing. The development in this task is quite easy, right? So those all overheads are problematic, I think. From estimate the analyze cost, right? That okay, why you need it and how you need it, right? As well, and later some project management. So in this, for example, this is my high one. Development was only, I think, 2 hours,
right?
For one, and for the second one, I think it was 3 hours, because I just didn't know if we want to have flow field. Is it a good option in this case, adding flow field to general ledger entries, or normal field? So if normal field table extension, it's not also a good way, right? I also will say I had it was in 2018, so it was a little different, because AL was not so nice as it is right now, and now you can do most of the things. But I remember the situation where I said, yeah, we can do it in 1 hour, that's not a problem. And it turned, because in CAL it was like a 1 hour job, right, for development, something, right? I will not say what, but it turns out in IL it's not possible at all, right?
Wow.
So that was the problem. So you need to spend time little on investigating. Maybe you shouldn't put everything in billable hours, because it's also your learning process. But nevertheless, there are such situations, right? So it must be analyzed first if we want it and how we want to do it. Right?
Yeah, I tend to explain to my colleagues and customers that yeah, in IL I have time for development which is fixed. Whether I just need to put one field on one page, this is 5 minutes of work, but I need to prepare half an hour and then deploy half an hour. This doesn't matter what I'm doing. So I always recommend to collect a few of these customizations and then do them in one step. This reduces costs quite a bit.
Yes, to all those points, Christoph, to your point, as I'm learning, I've added fields to 3 different list pages. Each one was a completely different experience. The customer only sees a field just appearing in that list page, but the technique used on each page was different. And now I'm like, okay, I need to be more cautious. I can't say that it's going to take 5 minutes because it might take 2 hours for me to figure out the approach for that particular page and whatever quirk or weirdness is occurring in that particular data set.
But I think that comes with experience, right? I mean, at some point
it does. Yep.
Down the road, I mean, all these customers that request all these different things, I mean, having worked with NAV for as long as I have, it's generally about the same kind of thing. So
right.
In this instance, I need to do something over here and here and here, and that's generally takes me about that long, right? So
yes.
So yes, I mean, but yeah, for me in AL, I know how it's done in NAV, but to Christoph's point, I don't know if that's how it's actually done. It's done today in AL. So I gotta get that. But when I've given estimates, I've kind of, well, this is how long it should take.
Yep.
For the AL I do right now, it probably takes a little longer than that. But that's because I haven't done a boatload of AL yet.
And that Henrik was exactly what was the case with what started my tweet a week ago, saying, okay, why is a partner asking 20 plus days, 25 plus days for something that I can do in, let's say, 5 days? Right. And 5 is probably even 3, because 5 is just putting in some extra margin. So why is he doing that? And it's not that they didn't know what needed to be done. It was just, I think they didn't know how to do it. They need to learn it.
Yeah.
But you guys, I'm listening to you guys. I'm not saying a lot. If I listen to you, if I was a customer, sorry for saying it, but all of you were scaring me away. You are not selling shit to me.
Yeah.
The only thing that you do is say, okay, yeah, you're asking something, but hey, that's going to cost you a lot. Or, no, I'm not sure how to do that. Or, oh, no, yeah, this is SaaS, so that means that it's going to be 20, 30, 40% extra because you're running in SaaS and because I think you need techniques like pipelines and testing and blah, blah. Guys, you are not salespersons. You are techies. Yeah. And the only thing you need to do is say, yes, I can. Of course I can do that, what you ask for. You need to sell yourself.
Well, we can say yes, but when the consultant or the sales manager needs to deliver the estimate to the customer, at least in my experience, they come to me and say, how much is this going to cost the customer? Mm-hmm. I need a price.
Yes,
and
you do.
That's what the challenge is, right?
Yes,
and so,
but the challenge here is exactly what Henrik said. It's about experience. Go on, Waldo.
Is my sound working? Hello?
Yeah. Now it's working.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I think there's a big difference that we need to start thinking about in this world, and that is the difference between what a customer should pay for experience and what a customer should pay for learning. So some things I have to learn and I can bill for. Some things should be an expectation that I have and that I would consider experience. And there has to be a balance between those things. I don't think that's a lot different from conceptually what we saw in Navision, where you saw someone who didn't know Navision and they were charging a phenomenal amount for learning something. But what are we allowed to learn or not? And in the end, you had that balance. You had, on this side, you had the customer, and this side you had Navision. And there was a knowledge gap between the customer. Do you know all the, some person knows everything about the customer, and someone knows everything about the code or the solution. And where does what's fair to charge the customer and what should I learn? So should I have an expectation that if I want to get into AL and I want to be selling these solutions, I should have a sort of expectation that I don't charge the customer for? But is it realistic or not? I don't know. I mean, I'm not stating this as a requirement. I'm saying that the question we have is, what is the difference between knowledge I should have, a base level, I should have this much knowledge, and what is it fair to charge the customer while I'm learning something new or getting on board? So defining those two things.
Well, I think, AJ, I think you make a very good point. If this
I was agreeing, just to be clarified, I was agreeing with what AJ said. Yeah, just so you understand, I'm agreeing with him.
So this type of detailed, showing the plumbing of what's going on in the back of our head when we're looking through this is, I would agree, it's not a great sales tactic. It's not a great conversation to have with the customer, right? So
Definitely.
And let me move to the next slide, which is a good segue.
Let me give one example to sell your customer something like source control management on GitHub or DevOps. Not talking about pipelines here. Just saying I need to set up a central system to store the source code. That's easily explained by, hey guys, I want to store the source code somewhere where you have access in case something happens to me. I need to set that up.
And I do that today. I don't even say it. I do it automatically. The partner knows it. The customer has no idea. So this is more just for us to understand what effort went into that estimate or what is included in the scope of that estimate. Yep.
Of course, just as an example. But I used to make, I compare to, let's say, I want to do some car maintenance. I'm not going to pay the mechanic for him to learn how to do maintenance on my car. I expect the car company to know how to do it. And also, if I have a new car, totally new to them, it's not my fault that they don't know how to do maintenance on it.
Hey, AJ, but you don't know, because you're not there, that other people are getting trained while your car is getting maintenance. So it might very well be that your car.
Valdo, can you get closer to the microphone, please? Your voice is a little bit low.
Okay. Well, it could very well be that your car is being maintained by someone without experience. You don't know.
But he's paying the same rate.
Okay, the rate that he agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
And is that including, I mean, if you charge me an hour for fueling up my car, I know that it's done in more than an hour in my car, but anyway.
Your car, yes.
Anyway, you know, in the fueling, but with fuel,
okay,
it's done in less than an hour. But anyway, I agree to a certain rate, right?
The trainee, that's baked in the overhead, right? That's part of the fee that the dealership charges. Is they have experienced techs, they have new techs, and it's a blended rate that comes out to whatever per hour. And tire rotation costs this much. And maybe if it's a trainee, they eat that additional time. If it's an experienced guy, they have higher margin, right? So,
and if it is a less experienced guy working on my car, I still need to trust my dealer that he does a good job, right, and he takes care of the quality. Hence, do some tests.
Waldo, if you take your car into service and they charge you 1 hour for doing an oil change on your car, you're going to be a bit pissed off, aren't you?
Oil change? Waldo's car? Come on.
Yeah. If you got an electric car and you take it into a mechanic and they say, oh, it's going to take an hour to change the oil, you're going to be a bit concerned, aren't you? You expect that person to know that electric cars don't have an oil change, you know?
So to move things along a bit, and I think it ties into AJ's point a little bit. So let me go to the next slide. What if, rather than proposing this type of thing, given what we're talking about and moving to the SaaS world, do we need to have a more refined offer to customers for this? And I think these were two interesting alternative offers that were sent to me. One is, it's free. Because when you implement BC, we have an expectation that you're going to need a few of these field and page customizations. Why don't we account for that in the implementation plan? And so we say, hey, we'll give you X fields or X pages, whatever that looks like, and that's going to be part of our standard implementation service. Alternately, maybe you charge for that. Maybe you say, okay, it's $50 per user, and we give you a package of, say, 50 fields or whatever that consists of, and plus a dozen different little widgets and tools that we offer as a partner, and that's part of our the marginal value we offer you as an experienced BC partner. We're going to give that to you for $50 per user a month. That includes testing, DevOps, maintenance, upgrades. It's turnkey. Maybe that's a couple of support hours in there. What do you think of that?
It's the future.
Personally, I'm not really in favor of doing it anyway like this. Personally.
Okay.
It's difficult to
say that again. You're not in favor of doing.
You're not in favor of this type of package deal?
No.
Okay.
Because in my experience, any kind of asked customization is so much different. I cannot just package 50 fields.
Right. I mean, yeah, I agree. You're opening a can of worms, and then you put that down and open another can of worms.
So
you always have.
What is the definition of a field, right? Where does that
will have discussions like, okay, did I use consume the complete budget for this month? Can I have it left over for next month? Yeah. Or did I really consume the whole budget? All these kind of discussions, you will have it over and over again.
I can say it from the end user perspective, where I had such maintenance plan. That was okay. Maybe we should use it because we will have only 3 months to use that hours, and it was even confusing for me, right? Because I had a feeling that I'm not using it, and I'm not paying. I'm paying for something which I really at some point I didn't need. Right. For example, with the fields, you have, okay, the first 2 months of implementation, people is asking you for a reports, fields, whatever, and so on. And later, you don't have so many, right? So you pay, the customer is paying for something which he doesn't need to, right? So, yeah.
What is a field? Just
exactly.
Yeah.
Look at the available quantity. What is available quantity?
Right.
I mean, if you ask this to 10 customers, it's going to be 10 definitions.
And interestingly enough, just today was the last day I had with one of my longstanding clients. We had an agreement throughout the year that I was providing a fixed number of hours to them per week at a discounted rate because they had a very long wish list of all the different things they wanted to do. And that gave them a planned budget that they could account for in their monthly spend. And it was up to them to recognize the value of that. And each step along the way, that gave us the freedom to do a little bit more of an informal quoting process that I could say, okay, well, all of these things that we're doing for you are part of this pipeline and this extension set already. So we're adding some complexity to your existing extension stack, but they're mostly small changes. It allowed them to kind of set their priorities. But with that customer, that was after years of working with them in other ways and understanding the process and understanding the value of what they were asking for. Whereas other customers I worked with in the past who are using the system between going downstairs and gutting fish, it means nothing to them. So it's very challenging from what level of sophistication is the client to whether or not that means anything to them and whether they will be able to realize the value of any sort of agreement.
I would say that such agreement, maybe even it's needed, but not for the for modification, right? So, for example, like all that kind of stuff, which is like pipelines and so on. I know you're not fun, but that we don't show it to the customer. We have one package, okay? You are buying the license from us, so here is also our service. We are experts. We know what we are doing, but we want to be sure that everything will work. If something will happen, Microsoft will change field and so on, automated updates. So we will secure you that your apps will be working, and that can be a fixed price, right? Because we will run the pipelines, we also have some costs. We will run it on our servers, right? So such a package could be sold, but I think for the maintenance, right? Not for the new modifications, maybe. That's
okay.
Yeah, because
brainstorming.
especially because a customer can decide if the modifications is wanted or not for this price. If he is a customer of you, you don't ask if he wants to pay for DevOps and stuff like that. This is something which you set because you need this for your work, and this
Yes.
need to be paid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
So instead of this, if you go with a traditional estimate, you could have the maintenance option. So we're going to charge X dollars or X hours to develop it. And because we have the need for the ongoing testing, the pre-release testing, catching the bugs, the COP rules that may require some refactoring, we can do time and materials. We could have a maintenance plan, and maybe that's based off a percentage of the original development cost. And so there was a proposal for time and materials. Hey, we'll charge time and materials for maintenance, fixing breaking changes, and any change requests. So you know what you're getting, and we could potentially provide you with a rough estimate of what that might be on a monthly or a quarterly or semi-annual basis. Then there was the option of, okay, 10 to 20% will include that. And then there was a very specific estimate of 16%. So given this small project, that would have been $150 per year for your DevOps pipelines, pre-release testing, updates, and deployments. And that's just to keep it working. That's not change requests. And then there was just a reference to SLA that didn't have specific amounts on it. This sounds like what we're talking about?
Yeah, in my case, it sounds like that. So we go for the annual maintenance on customizations. Yeah, and everything is included in that one. So we indeed foresee DevOps for ourselves. I mean, this is the way for us to be able to develop, but also to be able to deploy and to be able to foresee any kind of changes in the next versions and stuff like that. But for any kind of customization, I think that is the most honest thing that we can do. The more customizations you will have, the more work you will have in deploying, in maintaining, in preparing for next version. So that's kind of like the more you pay for that. Whether it has to be 16%, in my opinion, and we did quite some calculations on that, that's a little bit steep. But on the other hand, this is a new world, and we try to find our way into that world. So it's difficult to predict what you will need to pay your own that maintenance, to pay that cost.
So do you include? So let's say that you've done this particular mod for a customer or something else, and 8 months down the road, the build server starts barking at you because you use the item cross-reference, which is now going to be moved to a reference table.
Yeah.
Do you, in that 16%, do you then include fixing that, or is that only a, hey, we have this issue, so here's a service order. We expect this to take us 3 hours, whatever, to change the code.
That's why it's 16%, why it's a bit steep, right? You will have some maintenance that you charge too much, and you will have some that there is not enough charged. But in the end, it needs to cover the costs. That's kind of like why you have maintenance.
No, I mean,
that's yeah. So we do it within the 16%.
Okay, so that's all the customer have to pay for that specific change.
Yeah,
and it's a risk. It's a shifting of risk, right? Time and materials puts all the risk on the customer, and the annual maintenance plan, the fixed annual maintenance plan, whether that's 10%, 15, 20, 16, that puts the risk on you. Within that scope, If Microsoft makes 6 breaking changes that requires you to spend 6 hours retooling that solution, well, you incur that cost. And in return, you get that annual maintenance stream, right? So hopefully you have some quiet years, but then one year you're going to get nailed with those modifications, right?
Exactly.
But how would you calculate the amount for the base amount for the 16% or 10% or whatever percentage you want to take as a maintenance? How would you calculate the base amount for that? For
It's
example,
the cost of the customization.
The cost of the customization.
What is the cost of the customization?
But is that a total sum of all your invoices you did for all customizations throughout the year? Maybe you did a customization in January, and then in March you did you fixed a bug on it, and later on you made a small extra tweak, and then it was removed. And I mean, at the end of the year, you have maybe spent twice of the original amount on it. So you say, okay, it's 16% of that double amount. No, that's not fair. So calculating the base amount is gonna at least give you some discussions with the customer.
It's pretty easy.
Bad, tough discussions that you're not going to have, because basically you've got a customer, they go to Microsoft and say, I'm going to buy this massive product called BC that does everything. And I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this. How much will it cost? And Microsoft will say $70. And I need this, $70. But I also need customers, I need vendors, and I need $70. And I need support and upgrades and maintenance, $70. Wow, that's great. Then I go to the partner. I need 3 fields here. How much does that cost? Okay, so that's going to cost $2,800. Plus, if you move the field, we're going to put another $400. Plus, we're going to add 16%. And if you did that mod in January, then it's going to be this. But in March, when you added a new change, I'm going to add another 16% onto that difference. I mean, the billing at the end of the year, this customer say, hang on, I'm paying Microsoft $70 in January, $70 in February, $70 in March, $70 in April. And you guys, I'm paying $2,800 in January, and then March you upped it because of this new change. I need an extra % in here. It's going to, and then, and I need 4 more fields added. I mean, this is not about being developers. This is about being salespeople and selling value to the customer. That's my opinion.
Exactly my point, David.
Yep.
Yes,
it is a challenge.
If we don't,
if you think only of development, it will not be $2,000, right? But then you just leaving your customer without any like support or anything, right?
No.
The support and maintenance takes time, right?
Okay, AJ. So this free. No, AJ, okay. This example, which Henrik had. With item cross-reference. I have exactly the same now. So will you fix it for free to the customer if you already did the modification for that and you did it for, let's say, 5 hours? So how you will deal with that? Will you fix it for free, or you will ask customer to pay for fixing it, or you will just...
You're not fixing anything. You're providing a service to the customer. Say, I'm going to put a field on this page that gives you the cross-reference, and it will work. And it's a monthly fee, and that's it. And it'll work. If it breaks, I'll fix it. But because the customer needs to have stability in their billing, one of the biggest selling points of monthly billing is that the customer can budget and know what their software is going to cost. I hate this idea. I love the idea of Navision where I could work my costs out and sell it, but I'm just scared that we have to adapt. We have to change.
David, like it seemed that you were in line with what AJ was saying. It seems now that you're not really in line
with him. I'm totally agreeing. This is a sales. We need to have something. I don't know how we're going to bill it. I don't know what the charge is going to be, but I know we have to have something that we can sell to the customer without telling them all this shit and crap in the background. Just here's what it will cost. I'll solve your problem. So go do it.
AJ, I totally understand your point and the complexity of tracking change requests of a given customization over time. So the 16% may become a complicated conversation. So what do you have any alternative ideas for how do you anticipate or hedge the costs of Microsoft making a change? It's not the customer's fault. It's not the partner's fault. Microsoft makes a change, breaks something. What do you do?
Well, I would say it's at least not my fault that Microsoft make a change that breaks the customization, right? So is that on the customer? I would say it's more fair that it's on the customer to pay for that than I would have to pay for it. I'm not gonna do that for free. They're using that software, and we make a change. And when we make that change, we can probably already predict what a chance will be that it's going to be broken or not in the future. I mean, I know that's not 100%, but a few fields on pages is probably not going to break in the future. While, for example, the whole source name thing, maybe Microsoft thinks, hey, that's a good idea. We pick it up, we make it happen in the base application. I mean, then you have to remove it. I mean, yeah.
So
that could happen.
If a customer says, I don't want to be stuck with a $3,000 bill because Microsoft made a change, can I just pay you $150 a month and you deal with what comes up for the scope of this customization?
That could be a model.
And so, I mean, to David's point, maybe the customer wants that steady expense, so they're not getting surprises, and they can budget for that. 150, 200, whatever is agreed upon that works for you. So you're stockpiling that effectively. And, you know, in 12 months, Microsoft has 18.0 causes a, breaking changes that takes you 4 hours to fix.
Yeah. Keep in mind that no customer is going to come to you. So no customer is going to come to you and say, right, here's my BC installation. Now I need 2 new fields added onto these 4 pages, and I need a source code, and that's it. It's not going to happen. They're going to come to you with 50, 60, 70 different minor modifications. And on 80% of those, over a year, you're never going to touch them. You're doing no work, but you're going to reel in the money. But 10, 15, 20% of them are going to make some disasters you're going to have to fix. You're going to eat that. You're going to have to eat those few percent that you lose on and make your money by having the stability of the easy stuff. And in Navision, we've never done that because we've always sold by hours and not by value add. We don't sell what is the value to the customer of this modification. And that's really what the customer wants now. They want to say, well, that field has got a value of $25 a month to me, or this one's got $5, or this has 1,000. And if we value sell, then it's up to us to have a team that can say, hey guys, we've got some, just fix this up and get going. It also encourages us to try and develop repeatable software, and in terms of extensions and add-ons that are resellable, that we can keep going and avoid the customizations. You know, every one of us out there as a partner have developed a whole lot of mods that we basically put into every customer because we know they're going to need it, right? Like the source thing, 50% of customers need that at some stage. They want to export their GL to Excel, and then they don't know what the name of the customer is. So we do that. And I just feel that we have to change from billing by hours and charging for hours and having a developer who charge hours and say, here is a development team, they do this, and there's our DevOps team, and there's our testing team, and all that is part of my business, and I deliver solutions to the customer. My customer gets a solution, not 10 hours of code.
And I would say the mid-market in the US, the customers don't want to know the first thing about source code control. They don't want to know anything about it. They don't care. They're never going to take it over. And it is my responsibility to be able to handle all of that. They just want a working, reliable solution.
Yeah, but it's your cost.
Exactly. And so I've only had one customer over 14 years ask me for an annual maintenance plan for my customizations. But that was also largely because Dynamics GP is so stable. When I upgrade from any version to any version, I know my customizations can be upgraded in generally less than 4 hours each. It's that stable. So different environment here. I can't anticipate that. But to the point that was just made, let me switch back. Some points that came up. Determine why the customer is asking for the fields to the extent possible. Can you talk them out of that, or can they use some alternative field or business process to eliminate the need for some of these requests? And so now I need to start asking, okay, are some of these requests really necessary and frivolous? And I, as the developer, I'm getting this information secondhand. It's going from the customer to a consultant to me, and I don't know if the conversation has been had to try and deter them from doing some of these. And then another great point, Include an hour or two of BC Designer training in your implementation. Let the customer learn how to use BC Designer to the extent that they can at least identify fields that might be put in Designer. But as I've learned, you don't want the customer opening up BC Designer 30 times and creating 30 different Designer extensions, because they all just pile up as separate extensions, is my understanding.
Yes, and it is, in my opinion, a very bad idea to give your customer, to teach a customer how to develop apps. I mean, that is what a designer does. And actually, they can do it in a production platform, because production does not have a designer to start with. So they need to do it in the sandbox, and then they need to know about the development flow. No way.
And after looking at the fields available and the source code to see which fields have been added to pages with it appears to just be visible false. I mean, the field selection is so limited. I have yet to come across one where the field that is being requested could be added using Designer. So
one small thing.
Talking about Designer or personalization?
Designer.
So the actual creating an extension.
An app.
Correct.
Which
like the worst option added to Business Central ever.
Yes.
Interesting.
If you
without tests,
with that,
without source control management, nothing.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?
My understanding is only making the field visible, right?
No,
It's
it's
personalization.
I think you're talking about personalization.
Oh.
Designer is creating app, and if you see that someone is using Designer, put 100 hours additional.
Because
100 volts on them.
When I look at Designer, there
for sure add some additional cost for fixing that.
There are only a small number of fields that can even be added using Designer. The fields I've needed to add were not listed at all in Designer, so I thought that was a visible property.
No, that's personalization you're talking about.
I think so. Personalization, yes.
Because I was surprised why I couldn't find many of these fields in Designer. The consultant already looked, and the fields like the ones I listed on the purchase order list, they are not available in Designer.
I thought Microsoft was adding that capability.
Sorry, what was that, David?
I thought Microsoft was adding the capability to add any field that was in the table.
That's what I thought, but we've double checked, and the shipment number and the vendor document number, they were not in the Designer. So that was the
thing
first
I
place
forgot to mention in my estimates too. Some of my customers, they will ask for things that maybe aren't possible for us, and that gave an opportunity as a partner to encourage them to potentially put things over on the Microsoft Ideas site and be more participating in the community for asking Microsoft for new features and adjustments. So that way, when Microsoft rolls out new versions, they may get some of their requests at no charge. It's just part of the platform. And then there's no ongoing cost. There's no initial cost. So it can be of value for a savvier customer to encourage them to give feedback directly to Microsoft through that mechanism.
Excellent idea. I totally forgot about that. Okay, so let me go back to our slides here. So to my surprise, there seems to be a consensus.
Time is money, Henrik.
Well, I unfortunately I gotta jump. I have another meeting here.
Okay, thanks for joining. We're about to wrap up as well, but thanks for joining. Okay, so interesting feedback. I did receive some cautionary advice, I believe, from Sarov, who said, well, you could use Designer, but be careful, because if they open up Designer and do 27 Designer, you're going to have a pile of apps that get thrown in there. So, okay, so I just put this
as a small thing, since I had recommended that. When we've done that with clients, we showed only our more savvy clients, and we showed them that as a rough to drafting tool that they are not to use in production. And what we would then do is in the sandbox, we would download those extensions and merge them into a single extension, and we would deploy and maintain that from then on. It just gave them a framework by which they could go through and modify up, 50 different pages to adjust which columns are shown in hidden written by default. But once they drafted that as a rough draft, then it became our job to bring that together into one extension and properly maintain and manage that from there on.
Clean it up.
I think that's an interesting idea.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
A nice prototyping tool.
I like to work like this together with my consultants, that I told them that before they write me down what field should be moved where and which should be visible and which should not be visible, they should go to designer on a local Docker container or installation on-prem, doesn't matter, and just send me the app package. I will merge it into my code and deploy it.
Excellent. Okay. So I think one of the things that's come out of this is the word I use is setting expectations, and this probably needs to start as early as possible in the pre-sales conversations with customers, because what I'm seeing with one customer is, as David has explained, they're paying $70 per user per month, and they're like, wait, why isn't this field there? Like, how come I have to pay to add this field and make it visible on a list page? And when you say, oh, that's a customization enough times, they start to get tired of hearing that. I think up front, they may need to know that this is something that is common. And to Jeremy's point about product development tempo, Microsoft may be pushing this, so that kind of makes it a more dynamic situation. And so I think we heard some feedback on a customization line item or a package of customizations that might be difficult to do at this point because of variations. When customer says just one field, that could be 15 minutes, that could be several hours and high risk. So that might be hard. Okay. So any other final thoughts?
A good other setting expectation is that I always encourage our clients to think on it. They see that they might need this field on a place and they want to customize it because you can, great. That may be the case, or they may just not know how to get the information that they need in the right way yet because they're new to the system. So many times we end up 6 months after an implementation reviewing all of the customs I asked for in the beginning and going, did you really need that? Do you really need us to still be doing that? And that lets us we set the expectation now up front. A lot of the things you're going to ask me for in the first couple of months, that may just be because it's unfamiliar and you don't know where to find things. So pay close attention to, should I really ask for this?
And a great example of that you helped me with, Jeremy, is adding I think it was the vendor name to the vendor journals. And we thought, oh, we just slapped the field on there. Then we discovered, oh, that was added as a feature, and you just flip a switch and it's magically there, no customization required. And even we didn't know that. The consultant didn't know it. I didn't know it. We had to review the code to realize that feature had been added. We just weren't aware of it.
I had that approach also with the reports, especially when implementing, because people are just asking for a lot of reports because they are used to in other systems, in old systems. And in fact, at the end, they end up not using them anymore. So I always saying, okay, let's wait with those reports. We can do it later, or if you really will need it, right? Or you can use this report and maybe that's okay. Maybe it doesn't have the same look like you had, but it has almost the same data.
And hopefully the report extensions is a viable solution, and you can add a few fields without a complete report rewrite.
And as I found, you have to be in the admin side to tell it to use a custom layout.
Yes, I recall that thread. Yeah.
And I don't know why they only do in the admin side, but.
Well, thank you very much for the conversation. It was very educational for me. I don't know that I have an answer to all of this, any single answer.
I'm more confused than I was before.
Great that we're having this conversation. It really is so good. And we need to talk about this.
It's new, right? It's new for us. It's new for partners that are transitioning from Nav. It's new for partners who are getting into BC. And I can say for sure from the GP world, it's just not there are many different concerns around this type of thing that we're just not used to including in estimates or discussions. So.
But I think from the NAV word is the same, right? I think we never include, we're not thinking about pipelines and so on for the customers before, because it wasn't updated so often, right? So customers still have 2009 version, 2013, and they just say, so you don't have those all things related to pipelines and to DevOps and so on.
You know, pipelines or DevOps, they shouldn't add to the cost. I mean, in previously in CAL, we did need, I had like 10, 15 developers, and I had to organize that development team, just like I have to do now, but with another language. That's it. And that's where DevOps comes into place. That bill does not go to the customer. It's basically you making sure developers can work efficiently.
Yes, that's true.
Well, the bill goes to the customer. The question is how it goes to the customer.
Yeah, it's baked into your overhead, right?
Yeah.
But Waldo, have you checked before, like you had a customer on version 2009, if in half a year the modification will work? No, we're doing it right now because we want, and it's not that we want to earn money on that, but we want to avoid situation where customer will end up with screaming on us at some point that it's not working. That's one thing. And the second is that we want to be sure that everything will work for such a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wasn't thinking like that because it wasn't mandatory, obviously, and the technology wasn't there. I mean, it was not apps. Now we have technology to be able to do that, and it's mandatory that we do that, right? So it's a completely different.
We've got one other challenge that AL is obsoleting methods that I don't remember Cal ever did, like with and options going to enums, and that means any custom apps we've written have to be changed. I guess you get about a 1 year window. So that's something else. So even though you should be able to roll things forward, there are some known instances where you have to do some work.
But don't make the mistake to think that Microsoft will obsolete fields or functions always a year upfront. Yeah. They tell you upfront which features will be deprecated a year upfront, but that does not stop them from doing breaking changes in code, small breaking changes that will definitely break your apps. And that's not about disabling and deprecating a feature. It's about doing new development or doing improvements or whatever. Yeah. And that can happen in every version, including the cumulative updates.
Yes.
And so that's
new rule sets are breaking changes. So
so every month, it used to be we had this clear milestone of this customer is upgrading from version 1 to version 2, whatever that is on-prem. Now it's almost like mini upgrades every single month. And so I don't see an alternative to the automated testing.
Yeah, but it's also that if you will not check on the next build, right, you will not find out, like with this item crossover, item cross references, right? If you not check it, you don't see it.
But that doing automatic test every month for the customer could be easily sold as a service. Just do that. Take that the car dealer. It's like the car dealer offer you something, a service saying, we take your car every month. You don't have to do anything for it. We take it, we test it, the oil level, or whatever, the tire pressure, and we bring it back to you. You only have to set a time for it if you want to do an update on it. So we take your car, we bring it back. That's a service.
It's like the leases, a BMW lease, no maintenance, right?
Exactly. So, and if you sell it in that way, you can easily sell a service then for a few bucks per month.
Yeah, and
It's
if you're
just how you
BMW,
bring it.
So what is different with my percentage?
no, if
Yeah.
you look at the BMW,
The base level.
if I'm
Well done.
leasing the BMW and my engine completely melts down, and BMW have to put a brand new engine into that car, that's a huge cost to them. They will lose the entire profit of the entire project. But because they're leasing out 1,000 cars, the other 999 they make money on. And if we can do the same, where we can say, well, basically, I know that on some of these changes, I'm going to lose money, but if I can make enough on the others. So our issue, my issue in this case would be, can I reach a level where I'm making enough over all of the other things that I can afford the cost of these losses when it goes bad?
I'm really confused. Do you mean now that you should like charge like a fixed fee kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
yeah.
So a small customer, one user should pay the same, like a 100 and you will maintain the same. So both of them asked.
You have to have a percentage for complexity, right?
Yeah, this is what I want to ask AJ.
What I'm saying is that instead of having an upfront cost and then a long-term maintenance fee, you work it out, come up with a number, and that's the fee it's going to cost you per month. And whatever it takes to fix it, to keep it going, we'll keep it going. We've got stuff in the background. We've got developers doing 1,000 different things, and I'll carry that cost.
But do you mean this?
I was asked, how can you calculate the 16%? Then how are you going to calculate that?
Yeah,
well,
like
I mean,
you build
customers.
One customer with one field, another customer with like a gazillion changes.
Yep.
But both pay the same.
No.
That's
not what I said.
How you can maintain that?
No, that's not what I said. I said you're going to have a package. The package will include X amount. If someone
for that customer
package, yeah, every customer will have a different package. But I'm going to get a package price so that customer has a stable billing. I'll work out what it's going to cost. I'll take some risk in there, and I'll know that of my 20, 100, it's BC. We're going to have 1,000 customers. So within my 1,000 customers,
see the difference what I was proposing actually. No difference.
But David, how you will calculate that package? Because okay, for me, Waldo's idea with 16% is understandable somehow.
Well, no, 16% is just a number that Rene Stockner came up with in 1998 in Atlanta and said, let's charge 16%.
Yeah, that's right.
Rene Stockner did it. We've all said 16%. That's it. It's just a number. No, I'm not saying I have an answer. And that's the first thing I said is I do not know. I'm just saying that in principle, where we have to head is that I can go to a customer and I can say, you buy this system, look at what you need. I'm going to get your price, and you're going to pay a monthly fee, and that's it. There's not going to be spikes or bumps.
But are you talking about projects or are you talking about products?
The whole year, basically for a customer going through.
For customizations?
Are you selling a project for a customer or a product?
No, like maintenance fee after.
I'm saying everything is packaged into one number. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but
how we get to that number, how we calculate, I don't have an answer to that. I really don't. I'm just saying.
But there is a difference if you develop a product and sell this to 1,000 customers.
Okay, you mean a product like an add-on or an extension or whatever?
Yeah. Or a project for one customer, and this is not reusable.
Right. Then I'm talking about the non-reusable stuff. I'm saying that for that non-reusable, I'm just saying that ultimately we have to simplify this for the customers, because what we are offering at the moment, I mean, I don't know how you guys bill, but I've stopped billing hours to customers anyway. I charge customers a monthly fee based on my knowledge of them. And some months I go way over and some months I go way under, but I don't bill hours anymore.
Interesting. So sorry, we are at 15 minutes over. So I just want to wrap it up.
Daniel.
But thank you all for joining. Thank you for your input and feedback. I've learned a lot, and I don't have the answers, or I'll have to think about how we implement this for my projects. But
the ultimate answer is 4.
Yep.
16. Peak 4.
4%, 4,000, 4 million, 4 will cover it. Yep. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and have a great weekend. And thank you very much for the discussion.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks,
Steve.
Thanks. It was really nice.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.